Welcome back to Pressers by FedNet, Congressional News Conferences in podcast form. On June 10th, Senate Majority Leader John Thune was joined by Armed Services Committee Chairman Roger Wicker outside the Senate chamber at a weekly news conference. Wicker was asked about President Trump's having federalized the California National Guard and sending Marines into Los Angeles to put down protests.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are making great progress on our Republican reconciliation bill that will lead to a stronger and safer America. And those two are intertwined because you can't have a strong and safe America, you can't have a prosperous America unless you have a safe America. And so prosperity and security, safety are all issues that are intertwined, and our budget reconciliation bill addresses all of the above. Starting, of course, with border security, where we make a generational investment in the border, starting with building the border wall, finishing the border wall, also allocating resources to Customs and Border Protection, to ICE to make sure that they have the resources they need, the technology, the equipment to do the job that we ask them to do to keep the border secure. When it comes to national security, we make an investment in the Iron Dome, or Golden Dome, I should say, and then also in our Navy and our Coast Guard, to make sure that our country is safe and secure from threats and equipped to deal with the requirements of modern warfare. And so those are two fundamental issues that are addressed in our budget reconciliation bill. And I think when it comes to the issue of safety and security, all you have to do is look at what's happening and has been happening in Los Angeles to realize that our law enforcement needs all the support that we can possibly give them. So I'm going to hand it off to Senator Wicker, the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, to talk a little bit about the things that we're doing in the Armed Services Committee's jurisdiction when it relates to making our country stronger and safer. Senator Wicker.
Thank you, Leader.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I do appreciate the opportunity that the Leader has afforded me to be back at this particular spot and speak at this press conference. And also, I want to thank my colleagues on the Armed Services Committee and my colleagues in the conference for allowing me to have the honor and responsibility of being chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I would say one of the most important parts of reconciliation is our defense and national security portion. And it happens that it is the least controversial between the House and Senate and the administration. This is something that Chairman Rogers and I and our teams and our committees have worked on for quite some time. I really appreciate the product the House sent us. I appreciate the input the administration has given, and we are really of one mind. We have a package that bumps right up against $150 billion. It's $149 billion and change. We continue to make minor tweaks, but within the conference of Republicans and within the Congress as a whole and the administration, we're on the same page. This reconciliation package contains 13 new battle force ships, the largest ever investment in unmanned ships. And clearly the unmanned ships are out there to supplement the battle force ships, but we couldn't do it without either one. Dozens of new United States manufacturing sites, the ability to expand our military industrial base, drones, counter drones, and the Leader discussed what we've seen in the past few days concerning homeland security, but also in the last few days we've seen really historic events pointing to the necessity of using drones ourselves and how they can be used by our allies to neutralize much more expensive weaponry, but also the need for counter drones because that threat goes both ways. There is money in here for border. There's money for critical minerals. I'll be going to the White House this afternoon to meet with the Secretary of State and other members of Congress about the issue of critical minerals. We may do a little tweaking there, but it will be minor. And so just to say, this is a very important part. Quite obviously, we're going to vote for this, regardless of what minor details, because we must prevent this huge tax increase from going into effect in just a few short months and weeks. But I'm very pleased at the progress we've been made, and I appreciate the cooperation of everybody in the administration.
Chairman Wicker, can I ask you a question? Because you're wearing a Ukraine lapel pin.
Yes, I am.
And for every day the Russia sanctions bill languishes here, brings a worse night for the people of Ukraine. One is not going to end the other instantly. But are you prepared to wait out the president? Are all of you prepared to wait out the president on this when he seems to have lost interest in ending the war?
Well, you're making that characterization, not I. But let me just say that this is a matter that Senator Graham has worked hard on. I know he's working with the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and my hope is that this bill can come to the floor within the next few days, perhaps next week.
Chairman Wicker, what is your...
I do not know the schedule of the leadership on that, but it is my hope that this sanctions bill will be passed. I think the House of Representatives will pass it by enormous bipartisan numbers also, and I think the president will sign it.
Chairman Wicker,
Yes,
what
sir.
is your biggest concern about sending these troops into the streets of Los Angeles and also doing this in an appropriate constitutional way, but also about concerns of having American forces on U.S. soil?
Well, I haven't spoken about concerns about that. Let me just say what.
Do you have concerns? About
Let me just say what, and I'll answer your question. I was heartened to hear the mayor of Los Angeles say yesterday that her interaction with the American military, particularly the National Guard, has been one of collaboration. And to me, that's how it ought to be. It seems to most Americans that this is a very dangerous situation. And I really think the governor may be making a mistake there politically. When a situation is fraught with the possibility of extreme violence, it would seem that the governor and the mayor would want all the help they can receive. And the National Guard is now present. The Marines are standing off, as I understand it.
Would you be comfortable with the president sending National Guard to your state if your governor said that they didn't need them?
In similar situations, I would think the governor of Mississippi would be happy to help, to have all the help he could get. But the main thing I want to stress is that we have a very important reconciliation bill that puts $150 billion extra where it needs to be to make America safe. And that's the purpose of the leadership calling on me to make this presentation at this point. So I'll be happy to answer questions about reconciliation, about the battleships and drones and industrial plus-ups that this will mean for the American people, not to mention our standing internationally.
Chairman, do you still have issues with the Department of Defense budget request?
I think this package of reconciliation is where there is almost unanimous agreement. And yes, my position hasn't changed. When the skinny budget came out with basically a flat line amount for the next fiscal year, I expressed my disappointment, and my position hasn't changed on that.
Chairman Wicker, are we prepared for conflict in the Indo-Pacific? We heard you ask questions this morning about the fact that more than half of our amphibious ships are not ready. They're not mission ready for a conflict in the Indo-Pacific.
That was the testimony of the acting chief of naval operations. That was the testimony of the top Marine 4-star in the United States, and so there's no question that we're not where we need to be. I think my message to Americans now is that while we are we're basically all right when it comes to deterrence. The curve is headed the wrong way. Our adversaries are increasing their capability while ours is decidedly going in the wrong direction, and there's just no denying that. Yes, sir. Yes, I'm happy to surrender the
Keep going, Roger. Keep going, man. The chairman.
On Los Angeles, do you see any inconsistency when the president criticizes and condemns the violent Los Angeles protesters, but then pardons the violent January 6 protesters?
Well, I mean, I think the issue that's in front of us right now is the chaos in L.A. And clearly the local officials there, for whatever reason, didn't seem up to the task of getting the job done there. And I think that, as Senator Wicker pointed out, it's kind of a political imperative, honestly, because one of the most fundamental questions most people, most voters ask is my family safe? Is my neighborhood safe? Is my community safe? Is my country safe? And when you can't answer that in the affirmative, then you've got a problem. And I think that's what they ran into in L.A., which is why they needed some outside help. But at the end of the day, it's about preventing chaos and preserving law and order. That's what this is.
Is there a chance that no tax on tips and no tax on overtime get replaced in the big, beautiful bill with, let's say, R&D tax credits or something else?
Well, I think that the president, as you know, campaigned hard on no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, Social Security, interest on car loans. Those are all things that are priorities for the administration, and they were addressed in the House version of the bill, and I expect they will be in the Senate as well.
Leader, do you have any concerns about Secretary Kennedy removing all the appointees from the Vaccine Advisory Board, and do you still have confidence in the Secretary?
Well, I think most of us up here want to have confidence in the vaccine process that is used in this country. And so as he makes decisions about who he's going to put on that, who he's going to replace people with on that panel, I suspect my colleagues and I will be paying a lot of attention to that.
Is there a plan B for the debt limit if you don't pass reconciliation by next date?
There is no plan B. It's plan A. We have to get it done. Failure's not an option. One more. Well, I think there are always provisions, and when the House sends it over, they don't have the restrictions that we have to comply with here. And so my expectation is there perhaps will be some things that won't survive the Byrd test, the Byrd bath here in the Senate. But we obviously are going to fight very, very hard on all those issues and make our arguments in front of the parliamentarian, and that process is underway. We've already been doing it. Well, there are some examples, which I won't get into specifics, but as you know, the Byrd test, of course, requires that it be principally about revenue and spending and not policy. And so, those are arguments. What we saw the Senate or the Democrats do when they had House, Senate, White House, unified control of the government, is they dramatically expanded the scope of what's eligible for consideration under reconciliation. And so we're using that template, and we're going to push as hard as we can for the priorities that the House included, in hopes that we can have a bill at the end that preserves as much of the work that the House did as possible.
Would you
Thank you.
hold the parliamentarian?
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer was joined by Brian Schatz of Hawaii, Tina Smith of Minnesota, and Martin Heinrich of New Mexico to focus on the potential impacts of budget reconciliation on household energy costs. The following material is protected by copyright.
Okay. We have a lot going on, so our caucus lasted a while. Thank you for waiting. And I want to thank Senators Schatz and Heinrich and Smith for joining us. Well, this week, as Republicans continue to jam through the big, ugly betrayal, we're continuing to sound the alarm on the devastating impacts of this bill. It doesn't just gut Medicaid, it dismantles the ACA, and we've just found it even forces cuts in Medicare. Medicare, so important to so many people, almost sacred, and it cuts that too. In New York, couples covered through the ACA would pay almost $3,000 more a year. People hate it when their health insurance goes up, and it's going up a lot because of the big, ugly betrayal. Private insurance will also go up. You say, well, I don't have Medicare, I don't have Medicaid, I'm safe. Private insurance is going up as well. All of this to pay for tax cuts to billionaires. It's no secret that this awful bill would rip away health care from 16 million Americans, steal food from children, balloon the debt, but it would also kill millions of jobs and skyrocket costs. And this week, that's what we are focusing on. It's not just health care costs that would go through the roof. Energy costs will be soaring. American households will pay up to $32 billion more for their energy. Starting next year, Americans will see a 10% increase in electricity prices, so will small businesses. In the Republican complete and total fealty to big oil and gas, they're hell-bent on destroying America's clean energy economy. It makes no sense. Clean energy is the cheapest way to produce new energy. The cheapest way is solar. It's the quickest, it's the cheapest. So why are they cutting it? Particularly when our country needs more energy because of the AI needs and so many other needs? I'll tell you why. Because there are a bunch of right-wing fossil fuel ideologues who hate all clean energy because they know it's the future, because they know it's cheaper, because they know it's the quickest to build. But they somehow have infiltrated the Trump administration, and they're calling the shots. Republicans in their rampage against climate are hurting American families. Republicans who claim to fight for jobs and families back home should oppose any proposal to do this. Look what we're talking about here. A bill so awful, so ill-conceived that House Republicans had to pass it in the dead of night. But now that Americans are finally learning what's in it, they have to go back again to fix it. Senate Democrats are committed to fighting this bill every way we can. That's why in the last few weeks we have doggedly made the argument that the House Republican bill doesn't meet the requirements for privilege in the Senate. This is the first argument in reconciliation, privilege. It has to fit the committees. And if it doesn't, they've got to go change it. Well, we made the argument that the House Republican bill doesn't meet the requirements for privilege, and Senate Republicans were forced to concede it's true. So now the House is going to have to vote again on a rule to change the bill, which gives some of those Republicans who say they hated the bill, some of those Republicans who say they didn't know what was in the bill, some of those Republicans who sent a letter to the Senate saying change the bill, a chance to do it. It's a do-over, a chance to stand up and vote for their constituents. As you know, some House Republicans expressed regret for the vote, as I said. They didn't understand what they were voting for, especially the clean energy changes were done in the dark of night. And now they can show that their regrets are real or just hollow words. It's clear after actually reading the text and hearing from the public, some House Republicans are howling buyer remorse. So I say to the House Republicans, particularly those who signed the letter, but many others who have expressed discomfort and concern at the provisions, now's your next chance. You had a chance once, you failed. Here's a second chance. No more ducking. They have their vote. They should use it to protect their constituents from this horrible bill. And if Senate Republicans actually pass the legislation, it's not going to grow the economy. It's not going to help the middle class. It's not going to deliver for working families. It's all going to deliver tax breaks for the billionaires. Senator Schatz.
This bill is going to create shortages of food, create shortages for health care, and in particular, we want to emphasize the shortages in electricity that this is going to cause. This is a basic question of supply and demand. Energy demand in the U.S. is soaring for the first time in many, many decades. Gas turbines are stuck in years-long backlogs. There's more investment in clean energy than in fossil fuel projects, and yet Republicans are racing to kill those clean energy projects to come online. Set aside for the very moment we are in the question of fighting climate change. Whatever your view about energy policy, both parties ought to agree that we shouldn't intentionally create shortages. There will not be enough energy online in the next 3 to 5 years if they pass this bill. And the leader is exactly right. There is an unexpected opportunity for those House members who voted for something, I guess not knowing what was in it, and then writing a letter to us saying, could you please fix it? And my view is, sure, we'll fix it. But the thing is, you guys get to vote this week to establish in 3 dimensions that you actually disagree with eviscerating the clean energy tax credits. You just put that in writing. You had some deniability after you cast your vote to say, look, it was a big bill, it was a fast process, and we're just at the beginning of this. Would you please fix it? You guys get to fix this. You guys get to vote in rules, and then on the House floor to put your vote where your mouth is.
Thank you, Senator Schatz. Who's next? Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Leader. As Senator Schatz said, the conundrum we're in with electricity right now is that we haven't been in this supply-demand space since air conditioners became a widely available technology. That was the last time we saw the kind of growth in demand that we're experiencing right now. On the supply side, the place we find ourselves in right now is one where if you want to order a combined cycle natural gas turbine, if you ordered it yesterday, you're going to get it in 2030 or 2031. If you want to build a new API 1000 nuclear generating station, as the president has said he does, it's going to take you 5 to 10 years to actually build that. If you want to do the geothermal stuff that's taking off in Utah and to some extent in New Mexico, that's scaling slow. It's going to be 5 to 10 years before that stuff is at scale. So if you look at this incredibly increased demand from artificial intelligence, from electrification, from the surge we've seen in manufacturing, and you look at the supply that's coming onto the grid in 2024 and what's coming on in 2025, well over 90% of that is actually renewables plus storage. And that's the case because it's the cheapest, fastest to permit, and fastest to build. So if you start throttling back 90% of your supply at a time when demand is going through the roof, what's the impact of that? And I'm here to tell you the impact is electricity bills are going up. They are going up all across the country, and Republicans are going to own that because there is no world in which we throttle supply like they are doing right now, especially with this reconciliation bill, but in 5 or 10 other different ways as well, and you don't see those electric bills go through the roof. IRA tax credits are the biggest piece of that, but it's not the only one. They've basically eviscerated the agencies that finance or permit many of these things. They said they wanted to build nuclear. The only nuclear that's been built in the last 30 years is what we just saw happen in Georgia, and that happened because of the Loan Program Office, where they've lost half the staff and defunded it in the president's budget. If you want to produce oil and gas, you need somebody at the Bureau of Land Management who can actually pick up the phone about a permit. They have chased people out of the Bureau of Land Management. You add that to the kind of permitting abuse that we've seen with Empire Wind, a fully permitted multi-gigawatt project, and then you throw in some steel and aluminum tariffs just to make what natural gas projects are in the books even more expensive. This is a perfect storm of higher electricity rates. And if they pass this reconciliation bill without changes, they're going to own every bit of it.
Now, Senator Smith.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. Thanks, everybody. So President Trump promised Americans that he would lower the cost of housing. But today, renting a home, buying a home is more expensive than ever. And the big, beautiful bill, so-called, is going to make that worse and not better. In this bill, deep-pocketed corporate landlords and private equity firms will be getting big tax breaks, while people who have worked hard and have saved up the money that they need to buy a home will find that a mortgage is higher and harder to afford. Just think about mortgage costs for a minute. The cost of a 30-year mortgage for a Minnesotan looking to buy a home would go up more than $18,000 because of the provisions in President Trump and the Republican tax bill. What's this about? The huge deficits in this bill are going to drive up the national debt, and that's going to drive up mortgage costs for everyone. Not only will mortgage rates go up, but Trump's budget would cut rental assistance by almost 40%. So for working people, this means folks that are working really hard and trying to hold it together, trying to afford their lives, are going to be hurt. There is something seriously wrong when the Republicans' bill subsidizes the very same private equity firms and big corporate investors that are buying at homes around the country and making it impossible for regular folks to compete to buy that starter home. But instead of unrigging the system so that it's fair for people, this big, beautiful bill makes it worse. It raises costs for middle-class people, not just on housing, but also on energy and utility bills and food, and regular Americans are going to be paying more, while big corporations and rich people get all the tax breaks. That's Trump and Republicans' big, beautiful bill, and it's wrong, and Americans do not like it.
Thank you, Tina. All right, I'm ready for some questions. Yes, down there. Well, first, we had one victory in this area even before the bill started, because the Republican proposal that would not allow a court decision to be in effect nationwide was outrageous. We made arguments that we were going to make sure the parliamentarian knocked it down, and before it even got to the parliamentarian, they pulled it out. On this latest proposal that would basically take away the ability of the courts to enforce the law by changing contempt, we are going to go before the parliamentarian, make a vigorous, strong argument against it. We think it does not meet the need. We think the birdbath will make it fail. Okay? Yes.
Thank you. Senator Fetterman has said that Democrats have lost the moral high ground by insufficiently condemning the LA riots. What's your reaction to that?
The bottom line is that violence in the riots is outrageous and should never happen. Full stop. That's the bottom line, and anyone who commits violence or breaks the law should be fully prosecuted. Having said that, Donald Trump bringing American troops and American Marines in against American citizens is not only provocative, it's not only dangerous, it really threatens the bedrock of our democracy. Yes. Not debating hypotheticals right now. Yes.
Will you be making an endorsement in the New York City mayor race?
I'm not going to make an endorsement.
Leader Schumer,
Yes.
Leader Schumer, there are going to be defense provisions in this reconciliation bill, and I understand how Democrats feel about the president sending in troops to Los Angeles. Would you try to put amendments into the Vote-A-Rama to try to bring some of that back?
You're going to see a whole bunch of amendments on Vote-A-Rama dealing with all of these issues. Thank you, everybody.
This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without express written permission from FedNet is prohibited. Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast. You can watch live action from Congress on our YouTube channel at FedNet TV.